Israel hopes to kind of um, make them go away with time. Israel, for example, in 2005, in an agreement that brought the EU into the crossing between Egypt and Gaza, Israel committed itself to helping, allowing aid to enter Gaza to allow the rebuilding of the seaport. And it never happened. So Israel is hoping to do the same this time too. The anti-war movement definitely has a role here to try and show Israelis that we are not, that we are in a kind of a tough position, because the anti-war movement basically supports the demands made by Hamas to lift the siege, etc. And right now, when we call for it, it appears as if we're siding with Hamas. And it's absolutely not the case. We're for the Palestinian people, and we want them to live and have access to Israel, access to the outside world, so that they can trade with Israel in the West Bank, etc. And the result is that the voices that are coming out right now, kind of criticizing the agreement, are mostly people more kind of to the Zionist left, who are saying, "Look at what you're doing. You are showing the Palestinians once again that what is working is force." Israel refused to negotiate and lift the siege while there was no war. Now that there is war, Israel is now willing to expand the fishing area. Israel is willing to, at least on paper, consider opening a seaport. And I agree with this criticism. Israel clearly shows to Palestinians, and this is the prevalent view among Palestinians, that what Israel understands is only force. And to be honest, I think it's true, unfortunately. When Mahmoud Abbas, when other Palestinian leaders say, make moderate statements and combat militant groups operating in their territories, they are ignored. Whereas when Hamas kidnaps soldiers, when Hamas lobs rockets at Israel, then suddenly we're willing to talk and negotiate.
You'll be aware that some support here the call for a total boycott of Israel, what's called BDS. Others of us think that such a general campaign on all things Israeli, or a campaign about boycotting all things Israeli, will play into the hands of both the Israeli right wing as well as the Jewish right wing here. What do you think about the boycott? And if BDS is not the right thing to do, what else can you suggest activists in the UK do?
Well, it's definitely a complex issue. One question is what I think is should be done, and another question is what is the kind of morally, what is the thing that feels right in terms of morals, but may not necessarily be the smartest thing. Mm-hmm. I think, first of all, that all goods produced in settlement on stolen land need to be boycotted, and this is something that is definitely happening in Europe, and I hope that this continues and expands. Now, as for the BDS, it's made up of certain, the boycott, the divestment, and the sanctions. I don't see sanctions happening anytime soon against Israel. It would, it would be sanctions. This is the sanctions are something that is very far from the current atmosphere in the international community towards Israel. There's a lot of criticism, but sanctions is something that is that I don't see happening anytime soon, unfortunately. I think, for example, the arms embargo that the UK is kind of hinting that it will do if fighting is resumed, I think it's a clear moral stance, and I think it's a very good idea. Unfortunately, most of the weapons that we get are from the US, and the US is not about to stop the shipments to Israel, even though I think it's a very, very necessary step. the BDS calls for boycott not of all Israeli goods, but of all Israeli goods that are kind of connected to the occupation. The problem is that in some ways, all Israeli firms, unless they make a very significant effort to not do so, they're connected to the occupation. For example, banks that serve all Israelis offer mortgages to settlers who build their homes in settlements. So I personally think that it is very moral to boycott Israeli goods that are tied to the occupation, goods that are produced in settlements. Now, whether this is the smart thing to do, I'm not so sure about it, because it can definitely trigger a reaction in Israel that the whole world is against us. Everyone is anti-Semitic. We only have ourselves to count on. This is a kind of reaction that we see in many countries that have been subjected to sanctions. On the other hand, it could trigger a kind of rethinking among the Israeli public, and even if not a rethinking, a kind of finally Israelis paying the price for the occupation. So I think every person needs to do what feels right to them. I personally don't buy goods produced in settlements. When you live in Israel, it's impossible to practice BDS because I live here. I mean, if I apply BDS to my life, I wouldn't be able to live here. But I think that certain companies, for example, companies that are involved with the Israeli military, with all sorts of human rights violation, they should be the first target of these kind of massive boycotts, because this, I think, will signal to the Israeli public that the whole world is not against us, the world is against the occupation. Whereas many other BDS targets are simply companies that to Israelis feel that they are Israeli and you are attacking us. The boycott of just Israel and not other human rights violators is anti-Semitic. So I think I would urge people in the UK to first of all boycott settlement goods and any other goods that have you can judge by yourself by reading about the company, any kind of serious connection to the Israeli occupation, to the Israeli military.
Thanks for that. I mean, you've already answered this substantially, but I wondered how much is anti-Semitism played by the Israeli government as being the policy of what they're up against in the solidarity movement with the Palestinians?
Definitely, anti-Semitism is presented as kind of the reason Europe hates us. Not, simply in opposition to the fact that Israel is the only democracy to hold an entire nation under military rule. Now, I myself think that anti-Semitism definitely has a role inside the Palestinian solidarity movement. We see it in chants made by supposedly pro-Palestine protesters that are in fact simply anti-Semitic. We see it in the way Israel is singled out compared to other human rights violators. People who come out to protest against the war in Gaza, for example, don't come out to protest against injustices elsewhere. So there's definitely a lot of hypocrisy. I don't deny that. But at the same time, I think that anyone who honestly cares about Palestinians and wants their lives to improve and wants the draconian military rule over them to end, I welcome them into my camp. I don't welcome people into my camp who are motivated not by love of Palestinians, but by hatred of Israel or hatred of Jews.
Thank you. What's your assessment of the state of the Israeli labour movement and its role and potential role in anti-occupation and social justice struggles? And do you have a view on the left of history initiatives like Wachman?
So, the labor movement in Israel, the largest kind of labor organization, is basically part of the state, the Histadrut. They have absolutely no role in the anti-occupation movement. They don't even have a role in the struggle for labor rights in Israel, to be honest. The strikes that they organize are mostly, and the agreements that are reached following those strikes benefit mostly the people inside the government who already receive kind of hefty salaries. They don't concern people at the bottom who kind of work through private contractors, or people who are at the bottom and are just not earning much. So this is an organization that is truly not concerned with labor rights. It's simply another tool of maintaining the control of the wealthy inside the government, the wealthy and the powerful. Now, as a result, because of the kind of leading organization in Israel for supposedly labor rights, because it's kind of morally bankrupt, there are new initiatives. The largest one of them is Koach Lovdim, power to the workers. They have kind of collectively bargained and unionized thousands of people. And they, I think, are a very, very positive force. All the people who kind of lead the organizations are very clearly leftist and are against the occupation. However, the organization itself does not attend anti-war protests, does not kind of call for an end to the occupation. At least I haven't heard anything like that. I still think that they're a very, very positive force because they're actually helping workers in Israel. Now, the organization that you mentioned, Waq Ma'an, it's kind of the classic model of a labor organization. It's a Jewish Arab labor organization. It's very strongly anti-occupation. It participates in every anti-war protest. I think it's a very, very positive organization. The problem is that it's quite small. I don't know how many people they're representing, how many people they unionized, but I'm assuming that it's hundreds, not thousands. And even if thousands, then it's not over 10,000. But they're a very, very positive organization, and I certainly urge you all to support them in any way you can.
Opponents of two states on both sides accuse the other nationality of being insincere about two states. Are there links or any possibilities of links between anti-war activists in Israel with Palestinians who are genuinely enthusiastic for a two-state solution? And do you think such links can alleviate the fears in both communities that currently undermine campaigning for two states?
So, many of the people who are in the anti-war movement are people who don't support the two-state solution. They support a binational state, a binational democratic state. I personally don't think that this solution is realistic in the short term. In the long run, I definitely want a kind of world without borders and nations, but I think right now if you put two nations that hate each other, the Palestinians for a very good reason, Israelis because to justify the occupation to ourselves, Palestinians are kind of presented as dangerous and kind of in a very kind of racist caricature way. There are people on both sides who definitely want the two-state solution. In fact, polls show consistently that most Israelis support the two-state solution and most Palestinians support the two-state solution. The problem is that on both sides, the governments in Israel, the government convinced Israelis that the other side is not interested in peace. And they present all sorts of claims that they rejected the very generous offers that we've made, etc., although the offers were not generous and are very, very far from the minimum demands of the Palestinians, which are the kind of a state within the 67 borders and with slight changes to borders. And the Palestinians